Today I'm going to share some ghost stories that prove certain presences never really go away. Like the one you're about to hear, where meeting a strange goth woman leads to a trip out to a house in the middle of nowhere, and the first encounter with an unsettling, unknown entity. But before we jump into the story, make sure you're subscribed to the channel so you don't miss any terrifying stories. And let me know down in the comments what city or country you're watching this from. We were all laughing our asses off late that night when Shelly, out of nowhere, drops this bomb. I can sense energy leaks in people. At first, we thought she was messing with us. I sure did. We were crammed into some 24-hour pizza joint, the kind with sticky booths and neon signs that buzz like a dying fly. Henry, the most outgoing guy in our group, had brought this goth friend of his, all dressed in black, dripping with weird symbol necklaces, her eyeliner sharp enough to cut glass. She called herself an energy vampire, and honestly, I figured it was just her aesthetic, a way to stand out. Then she gets dead serious, locks eyes with me, and starts describing exactly how I'd been feeling for weeks, drained, disconnected, like something was siphoning the life out of me one drop at a time. Not the kind of thing you guess from a glance. Henry got awkward fast, tried to pivot the conversation, but Shelly kept going. Said it was classic, unresolved emotional leakage. That hit different. Not that I buy into that stuff, but then she nailed it, word for word. This recurring nightmare I'd never told anyone. An endless hallway, a red door I could never reach. She leans in and goes, "You never get it open, do you?" I forced a laugh, half convinced she'd gotten lucky, half wondering if she was scamming us. But Henry? Dude was hooked. He's always had a soft spot for the occult. Tarot cards, ghost stories, that kind of thing. Though he never took it too seriously. So of course he's the one who says, "Okay, if you're so connected, introduce us to this Mother Morgana lady." Shelly raised an eyebrow, smirked like she knew something we didn't, and said it was a bad idea. But if we insisted, she could arrange it. Days passed before she sent the location. Middle of nowhere, practically the state line where cell service dies before you even get close. We took Henry's beat-up hatchback. Thing groaned like it was protesting every turn. The road turned to dirt, then to ruts, and the trees. Christ, thick, gnarled, like the forest had swallowed the path whole and was digesting it slow. Then the house just appeared, sandwiched between the branches like it had been there forever, waiting. Rotten wood, broken windows, the whole abandoned horror movie vibe. But Shelly hopped out like she owned the place. No electricity, just candles flickering in the corners, throwing shadows that moved wrong on the mildewed walls. The air smelled like wet rot and something sickly sweet, like expired incense. At first I figured it was all theater, some elaborate prank or LARPing bullshit, but the air inside? Heavy, like breathing soup. Henry went quiet. Henry, the guy who jokes through everything, just staring at the walls like he expected them to bleed. I asked if Mother Morgana was here. Shelly just said, "She comes when she wants." 2 stories. The bottom floor was a mess. Sheet-covered furniture, melted candles, handwritten books with pages yellowed like old teeth. No sign of anyone living there. Shelly told us to go upstairs. Henry hesitated, but I led the way. The stairs creaked like they were warning us. And something was up there. Light footsteps, uneven, like a kid running and then freezing mid-step. The second-floor hallway hit me like a slab of ice. All the doors were ajar, the air colder than it had any right to be. Shelly pointed to the last door and said, "She's in there." We exchanged looks. Henry muttered that this was wrong, that we should bail. But I'd come too far to chicken out now. I pushed the door open. At first, I thought the room was empty. The window was shut but shaking in the wind. Just a torn armchair, a cracked mirror propped against the wall. Then I saw her, in the corner, still as a statue. Child-sized, but wrong, wrinkled, sagging, like a mummy that had been left in the sun too long. Her skin looked like burned paper, and her face, there was no face, just a mouth, a wide, jagged slit where her nose should have been, packed with crooked teeth like broken glass jammed into swollen gums. The thing turned its head toward me. No eyes, just that mouth twitching, like it was smiling, or about to speak. My heart hammered so hard I thought I'd puke. For a second, I was sure the floor would open up and swallow me whole. Henry screamed behind me. Shelley was gone. And the thing started moving. One slow step, then another, until its mouth yawned open in a silent shriek that echoed inside my skull. Then, black. I woke up outside, face planted in the dirt. My cheeks scraped raw, my mouth dry as bone. Henry was slumped against the car, pale as a ghost, staring at nothing. He wouldn't talk. Shelley was nowhere. The road behind us looked even more deserted, like time had stopped while we were in there. I tried talking to Henry on the drive back. Nothing. Just one whispered phrase, like he was talking to himself. That wasn't human. After that, dead silence until he dropped me off. And that's when things got worse. I tried to play it cool. Went back to work, avoided thinking about that house, drowned out the memories with loud music, TV static, anything. But that feeling, like I was being watched, like something had followed me home, wouldn't quit. Henry vanished, stopped answering calls, ignored texts. Mutual friends said he was off. I finally got his sister on the phone. She said he was a shell, quiet, sleepless, jumping at shadows. Oh, and he'd smashed every mirror in his place. When I asked why, she just went silent, then hung up. Then Wednesday night hit. I was doing dishes when I caught a familiar smell, incense, damp earth, something sour. I turned to the kitchen window. In the dark backyard, a crouched silhouette, frozen. Then it stood, slow, and turned. A woman, or something shaped like one. Burned skin, arms too long, neck bent at a wrong angle, like it had been snapped and poorly reset. Her eyes, no pupils, just two black pits. She was extinguishing a fire with her hands. But there'd never been a fire back there. I finally moved, ran to the back door. Nothing, just wet dirt and marks, not footprints, claws. The next morning my phone buzzed. Unknown number, no text, just a photo. My house at night, lights on, my shadow in the living room window. Then a second message. Mother Morgana never forgets. My stomach dropped. My breath came short. That's when I realized this wasn't just a bad memory. I'd brought something back with me. That same afternoon, Shelley showed up. Just there. Rang the doorbell like it was a social call. When I opened the door, she was already smiling. But it wasn't her smile anymore. Something empty behind it. She walked in without asking, looked around, and said, "She likes you." I just stood there. Asked what the hell that meant. Who Mother Morgana was. What we'd seen in that house. Shelley didn't answer. Just said, "Some doors once opened never close right." Then she locked eyes with me and asked, softly, "You sleeping okay?" I told her no. That I'd been waking up every night at 3:05 a.m., like something was standing over my bed. She nodded like she'd expected it. Said Henry had the same thing. And now, he sees her in every mirror. I told her to leave. But before she did, she turned and said, "If you light anything in the backyard, she appears. And if you put it out, she marks you." The second she was gone, I bolted outside. No fire, but the ground was stained, dark, like something had burned there. The grass around it was withered. That night, I locked everything, shut the blinds, killed the lights. But at 3:05 a.m., something woke me. A dry, rhythmic tapping from the living room. I grabbed my phone, hit record like it had saved me, and crept out. The TV was on, no sound, frozen on an image. Me, standing in front of the screen. But I was on the couch. The figure on the TV moved, smiled, that same stretched, tooth-filled grin. Then it pointed at me. I lunged for the remote. The screen went black, but the reflection stayed, and it smiled again. I slept in my car for a week, moved apartments soon after, cut off Henry, Shelley, anyone tied to that night. But some nights, I still wake up to that smell, hear those light, uneven steps, and the TV, sometimes it turns on by itself, always at 3:05, always on the same channel. Creepy, right? What did you think of the story? On a scale from 0 to 10, what rating would you give it? Drop your opinion down in the comments. Stories like this leave you with the feeling that some people carry invisible burdens for life. But sometimes the horror isn't hiding out in dark forests. It shows up right inside our own homes. Like in the story you're about to see, where a grotesque presence appears, hanging from the ceiling of a newly remodeled apartment. My apartment door felt off that night. I can't explain it. Same door, same empty hallway, same flickering yellow light at the end of the ceiling. But something was different. It wasn't just the silence. It was the kind of silence that presses down on you, slithers inside you like something's waiting on the other side. I stood there for a few seconds, key in hand, staring at the doorknob like it might bite me. Then this creeping dread hit me out of nowhere. The kind you get when you know you're being watched, even when you're alone. Or at least, you think you are. I turned the key slowly, quiet as I could. The hallway light flipped on behind me, making the apartment inside even darker. The renovation had turned out great. Clean, modern, polished concrete floors, sleek furniture, pendant lights. But none of that mattered right then, because the second I stepped inside, I saw it. Something was hanging from the living room ceiling. It took me 2 full seconds to register what I was looking at. A long, dark shape, swaying gently right in the middle of the room, like it had been left there on purpose. Too thin to be a normal person. Not a light fixture, not decor. A person. I froze. The only light came from the window, filtered through the white curtains. The moonlight hit whatever it was dead on, and my eyes slowly picked out the details. A woman, or at least something shaped like one, hanging upside down, suspended by her feet from the drywall ceiling like gravity didn't apply to her. Long hair nearly brushing the floor. And her neck. It glistened. Not in a good way. Wet. Twisted. Like it had been wrung out too many times until it split. Panic locked me in place. My heartbeat roared in my ears. I couldn't move, couldn't scream, couldn't even breathe right. One thought hammered through my head. If she turns and looks at me, I won't make it. Some primal part of me knew it with absolute certainty, and she just kept swaying, slow, deliberate, like she was waiting for the right moment to do something. Then the movement changed. The body, which had been rocking gently, started swinging harder, like someone had shoved it. Her head began rising and falling violently, slamming into the ceiling. First slow, then faster. Each impact made this dull, wet crack, like bones breaking over and over. And I just stood there, cold sweat dripping, shaking head to toe, legs locked in place. It was like the thing was feeding on my fear. Just as I thought I was going to black out, a door opened down the hall. "Hey!" A gravelly voice called from the neighbor's apartment. "Keep it down, will ya? Some of us are trying to sleep." I whipped around like I'd been yanked out of a trance, and in that split second, my eyes left the figure. She was gone. Vanished. When I looked back, the living room was empty. Just the curtains swaying in the breeze. I stood there for minutes trying to convince myself I'd imagined it, but I knew I hadn't. The fear was still clinging to me, thick and suffocating. The apartment felt tainted. I slammed the door, flipped on every light, and tore through the place, searching for some rational explanation. Nothing. No marks on the ceiling, no footprints, no signs of anything. I didn't sleep until the sun came up. The next morning, before leaving for work, I gave the living room one last look. That's when I saw it, a clump of long, dark hair on the floor. Tangled, like it had been ripped out by the roots and left behind. I scooped it up with a dustpan, sealed it in a bag, but that feeling of being watched never lifted. Not even for a second. After that night, I couldn't sleep there anymore. The first few days I stayed in a hotel. Then I tried going back, but every time I got near the building, that same dread crawled over me. Like something in the air clinging to my skin, seeping into my pores. It wasn't just fear. It was certainty that I wasn't alone. I called a priest. He walked through, blessed the place, sprinkled holy water, did everything he could. Said he didn't sense anything, but he gave me this weird look on his way out, like he wanted to say something but thought better of it. I started digging into the building's history. Turns out it was built in the 40s, used as a boarding house for decades. Found scattered reports online, noise complaints in the dead of night, tenants who moved out suddenly, people claiming they'd had the same nightmare over and over, but nothing solid, nothing that explained what I'd seen. What haunts me the most is that I never found out what it was. Not ever. No answers. No closure. Just that hanging body, that slow sway turning into chaos, and then silence. Eventually, I sold the place. Walked away without looking back. Left one message in the building's group chat. If you hear knocking on the ceiling in the middle of the night, don't open the door. Since then, I've never been able to live in an enclosed space. I need windows open, noise, people around. But sometimes, in the glare of a turned-off TV or a dark corner of the ceiling, I swear I see something. A shape, a strand of hair, a wet glint that shouldn't be there, the kind of thing you don't forget, even if you try, because whatever it was got inside me. And there are still nights I jolt awake to the sound of that head slamming into the ceiling. Thud, thud, thud. And all I can do is lie there, paralyzed, praying it doesn't turn, because if it does, I'm done. So bizarre. It's hard not to picture that figure showing up again at any moment, even if only in the corner of your vision. And the worst part is, when evil shows up in the place where we should feel the safest, in bed. Just like in the story you're about to hear, where a woman wakes up paralyzed, staring at something sitting right beside her. You could feel something was wrong with that house even before you pushed the gate open. The air there was thicker, heavier, like it had weight. The old walls, the roof sagging with moss between the shingles, the windows always shut. Everything about it felt out of place, out of time, and it wasn't just in my head. Ever since we moved in when I was little, I'd had this sense that something was watching me. Not the kind of fear you get from the dark, not a kid's overactive imagination. This was real, physical. Like the house was breathing with me, but on its own rhythm. Like it was waiting for something. My parents had just split up and my mom didn't have many options. She managed to rent the place for way below market. Too cheap for a town like that, especially on a street that looked so quiet. After the last mine shut down, people started leaving, abandoning everything behind. The town became frozen in time, full of empty houses and stories no one wanted to tell anymore. Only the ones with nowhere else to go stayed. And that's how we ended up there. The first night I woke up to a voice. Not a scream, not furniture scraping across the floor. It was singing. Soft, like a lullaby. The melody was sad, and the words, I couldn't understand them. Some language I'd never heard before. I sat up, 4 years old with my heart pounding, and crept toward my bedroom door, following the sound. When I reached the hallway, I saw her, a woman standing outside the room that would later become the most feared in the house. She wore an old white dress, barefoot, her back to me. I knew she'd seen me, though. Even without turning around, I felt it. She kept singing, stepping closer to the wall, and then she was gone. Just like that, walked right through it like it wasn't even there. And the singing stopped. I didn't tell anyone, not because I was scared of ghosts. I was more scared of my mom thinking I was making it up. She was already stretched thin, exhausted, on edge all the time. My dad had vanished without a trace, and my grandma was the type to call anything unusual divine punishment. But that woman, she didn't scare me. There was something almost comforting about her, like she was trying to protect me. And for a while, as long as she appeared, I felt less alone. But then one day she stopped coming, and that's when everything got worse. It started with my uncle's death, my mom's brother. He lived with us because he had nowhere else to go. He was an alcoholic, always causing trouble, but he was the only steady male figure in my life. One night, after a nasty fight with my grandma, he locked himself in that room, the one where the singing woman had stood. No one knows exactly what happened. We just heard a loud noise, and when we broke the door down, he was lying on the floor, his neck twisted at an impossible angle. They said he fell, hit his head. But to this day, I know it wasn't that simple. The room felt different after that. Darker, colder, even with sunlight streaming in. After that, my mom decided I should sleep in that room. She said it was the only way to get over it, to prove there was nothing there. But I knew the truth. She just didn't want to sleep in there herself, and that's when the nightmares started. I'd wake up feeling like I was being pulled downward, like the mattress had turned into a pit. Some nights, I'd feel invisible hands grabbing my arms, slamming me back onto the bed every time I tried to get up. I'd wake up with bruises, scratches no one could explain. No matter how much I talked about it, my mom thought I was faking or imagining things, so I stopped trying. Then came the night I woke up unable to breathe. There was a shadow on top of me, dense, heavy, like it was made of dark smoke. No face, no real shape. Just this crushing weight, this negative energy pressing me into the mattress. It stayed there for minutes, unmoving. And when it finally vanished, the room was so cold I could see my breath. That's when the objects started moving on their own. First it was small things. A spoon falling, a door creaking open. Then it got worse. Plates shattering against the walls, chairs sliding across the floor. We started taping the cabinets shut, and the fridge took real effort to open. It was like the house was trying to force us out. My grandma started having a priest come bless the house every week. For a while it helped, but when he stopped coming, saying whatever was in there was older than he could handle, things got worse. The focus shifted to the basement and the pantry. Some days we'd hear noises down there, even with everything locked up. Footsteps, whispers, and that singing. Sometimes it came back but twisted, like the woman was trying to warn us that something far worse had gotten loose. Something even she couldn't hold back anymore. I avoided the pantry like it was a black hole. Never went in there alone. When I had to walk past it, I'd look the other way, holding my breath. That feeling of being watched came back, stronger this time, like something in there was just waiting for its chance to get out. And deep down, I thought it already had. It wasn't long before my health started failing. Constant fevers, nightmares that made me scream in my sleep, dark circles under my eyes, and this gnawing dread I couldn't shake. I didn't want to eat, didn't want to play, didn't want to leave my room, but I didn't want to stay in there either. It was like I'd lost the will to exist. My mom said it was trauma from my uncle's death. My grandma blamed demons. But me? I just knew something bad had latched onto me. Like a piece of that dark energy had stuck to my skin. At home, no one talked about what was happening. It was like we'd made an unspoken pact. Everyone saw it. Everyone heard it, but no one acknowledged it. One day, a vase flew across the living room and nearly hit my mom. She froze, cleaned up the pieces, and acted like it was the wind. My grandma started carrying her rosary everywhere, and I realized they felt it too. They just didn't know how to deal with it. The singing woman never came back, and with her gone, it was like something stronger, crueler, had been unleashed, like she'd been a barrier. And now the house was free to show its true self. The energy changed. It wasn't just fear anymore, it was rage. Built up, living, pulsing through the walls, especially near the basement. There came a point where we all slept with our doors locked from the inside. And it wasn't for safety. It was pure terror of what might come in. We'd hear footsteps in the hallway at night running back and forth, doors slamming, and sometimes crying. But not human crying. It was like the house itself was mourning, like something inside it was in pain. Or hungry. I remember one night in particular. It stuck with me more than any other. I was lying in bed, trying to sleep, but I could feel that heavy presence in the room. The shadow came back, but this time it didn't stay still. It moved to the edge of the bed, and for a second, I thought that was it. I felt the mattress dip, the weight pressing down. Then a voice. Not loud, not monstrous, just a cold whisper right in my ear. "Now it's you." I bolted, stumbling over my own feet, sobbing, screaming for my mom to get me out. For the first time, she really listened. Maybe she saw something too. That same day, she decided we were leaving. It took weeks to sell the place, and those were the worst weeks of my life. Everything escalated. The noises got louder, objects moved with violent force, and the feeling that the house was alive became undeniable. There were spots I wouldn't even look at anymore. The pantry became a blind spot. I'd sprint past it, holding my breath, eyes fixed on the floor. I was sure that if I looked, I'd see something looking back. When we finally moved out, my grandma refused to leave. She said it was her home, that everything she had was there. My mom tried to convince her, but it was no use. So it was just the two of us who left. The new house was brighter, more open. But the fear followed me, and it wasn't just in my head. I knew I'd brought something with me. I'd hear noises at my door, feel that sudden cold I'd come to recognize too well. It was like something had clung to me since that last night. Some mornings I wake up with the sense that someone was singing near my bed. The same sad melody, but now, distorted, slower. Like the protector from before had been consumed by the same force that took over the house. I heard the old place stayed empty for months after we sold it. No one could last more than a week. A couple tried to renovate but abandoned the project overnight. For a while, a religious group rented it for meetings. They lasted 3 days. Nowadays, the house is boarded up, but sometimes when I drive by, I swear I see a light on in the back bedroom window. And if I roll the window down, if I pause for just a second, I can hear a song. Faint, sad, and coming from the wall. Scary, isn't it? Even when there are witnesses, like during a video call, you still get the feeling that no one can really help. And that same sense of helplessness follows encounters that seem to come from another world. Like in the next story, where strange figures keep showing up in a lonely, empty field. But before we go on, if you've made it this far, it means you're enjoying these stories. So hit that like button to let YouTube know you want more creepy content, and so you never miss another horror story. I was in that weird in-between state, where you're not quite awake, not quite asleep, and you don't even realize you've dozed off. The house was dead silent, just the slow hum of the ceiling fan spinning lazily overhead. The late afternoon light filtered through the curtains, and the stale smell of old coffee still lingered in the air. My laptop was always left on in the living room, Skype running, because that's how Jake and I stayed connected almost every day. Long distance is brutal, so we'd developed this odd habit of keeping the call open even when we weren't talking, just to feel like the other person was there. Sometimes he was working, sometimes I was studying, but the video feed stayed on, like we were sharing the same space. I jolted awake with this strange sensation. I don't know if it was a sound or just a chill, but my eyes snapped open. The light was dimmer now, almost blue, like the sky had suddenly clouded over. I tried to move. Nothing. My arms, my legs, my neck. Everything was locked in place. Only my eyes could shift, and even that took effort. My chest rose and fell slowly, heavy. For a second I thought I was dreaming. Tried to convince myself of it. But then this metallic smell hit me, like rust or dried blood, and that didn't fit any dream I'd ever had. That's when I noticed. Someone was in the room. At the foot of the bed, in the corner, a figure. A woman. Pale, not just light-skinned, faded like an old photograph left in the sun. She was wearing a long, tattered dress, grimy at the edges. Her hair was black, long, hanging forward over her face. And the way she sat, twisted, like her bones didn't quite fit right. One shoulder higher than the other, her head tilted at an unnatural angle, like it was barely attached. I tried to scream. Nothing came out, not even air. My throat was sealed shut. All I could do was stare, wide-eyed as this thick, suffocating energy filled the room, like the air itself had turned heavy, charged with something wrong. Then she started to turn, not all at once. It was like her movement kept catching, jerking in tiny increments. Her head rotated in these uneven, stuttering motions, like a broken stop-motion animation. First the neck, then the shoulders, the torso. Each little click of movement made my heart clench tighter. I was frozen, lying there, unable to move, and this thing was twisting toward me. But her face was still hidden behind her hair. She paused halfway, her head drooping forward, the strands nearly brushing the mattress. That's when I felt it. A shift in the air. Like something in that room had just woken up. It wasn't just fear. It was pure, primal terror. The sense of being watched by something that wasn't just a ghost. Something old, like it had been there long before I ever moved into that apartment. I squeezed my eyes shut and started praying, desperate, fragmented words in my head, begging for it to stop. And then everything crashed down. The Skype call, still open in the other room, started glitching, static, echoes. And then my own voice came through. But it wasn't me. It was a scream, raw and sobbing, like it was coming from somewhere else, some other version of me. I still couldn't move, but somehow that was already being transmitted. With every ounce of effort, I finally twitched a finger. Then my arm. My breathing sped up, back under my control. When I opened my eyes again, the room was empty. No figure, no shadow. The light was normal. But Skype was still on. I stumbled into the living room, unsteady, like I'd just woken from a coma. Jake's face was pressed against the screen, pale, eyes wide. The second he saw me, all he could choke out was, "Are you okay? What the hell was that?" I didn't get it at first. He said he'd heard everything, my screams, my crying. And worse, for a few seconds he'd seen a woman behind me. Just a white shadow near the bed. The connection had glitched. The image, distorting like a magnetic field, was interfering. But the part that destroyed me? She looked right at the camera. But she didn't have a face. I didn't sleep that night. Every time I blinked, I saw her, the jerky movements, that smothering presence. The next day, I moved my laptop, switched rooms, slept on the couch. None of it helped. The next night I tried sleeping with the lights on. Big mistake. The shadows stretched, warped. One of them, in the corner of the ceiling, had her shape, like she was clinging there, watching. That feeling of being observed never left. Jake begged me to get out of the apartment, crash somewhere else. But I needed to understand. I dug into sleep paralysis, supernatural encounters, anything. Found stories just like mine. Women in white. Female entities tied to bedrooms, to the space between waking and sleeping. And almost all of them said the same thing. They never show their faces. A week later, I decided to face it. I turned Skype back on with Jake, left the room just like before, lay down and waited. Hours passed before my body finally relaxed into sleep. And then I felt her again. But this time, I couldn't even open my eyes. The paralysis hit harder. All I heard was the scrape of a chair in the corner being dragged across the floor. Then slow, light footsteps, getting closer. And then, silence. The next morning, my laptop was closed, and in the Skype call history, there was a recording. When I played it, I dropped my coffee. The footage was dark, grainy, the camera shaking. But for 3 seconds, you could see her, hunched behind me, hair covering her face, staring at the lens, motionless, like she knew she was being watched. That's when I realized she wasn't tied to my room, not to my sleep. She'd used Skype. She'd crossed over. And now, I had no idea where she really was. But I know she's still here, because last night when I shut down my computer, it turned back on by itself, and the camera lit up, terrifying. What did you think of that one? On a scale from 0 to 10, what rating would you give it? Leave your thoughts in the comments. I'd never seen Max like that. And trust me, that dog had been through storms, fireworks, even a run-in with an angry bull. But that evening, as we left the last ranch behind and started climbing into the open field, he froze. No bark, no growl. He just stopped, tucked his tail between his legs and stared at me, panting like he was saying, "We shouldn't be here." I laughed, called him, tried to play. Nothing. He wouldn't budge. It wasn't until I yanked the leash harder that he finally moved, but only because he had to. His eyes weren't on me, though. They were locked on some spot in the tall grass, like he saw something I didn't. The sky was darkening, and that orange twilight glow made everything feel off. You know that moment when time just stops? Like the whole world holds its breath? That's exactly what it was like. We walked a little farther. That's when I saw him. A man standing in the middle of the field, perfectly still, upright. He was dressed in hiking gear, backpack and all, but his skin, It looked gray. His eyes were open but empty, like dirty glass. He wasn't doing anything, just staring. And yet I felt like he could see straight through me. Max started shaking. I thought maybe the guy was sick. I took a step forward, asked if he needed help. That's when he moved. Not toward me, not sideways. He turned, but only his legs, like someone hit rewind on an old VHS tape. He started walking backward, eyes still fixed on me. Each step was wrong, mechanical, like his joints had been put together all out of order. My breath caught. I practically ran home, dragging Max, who looked like he wanted to dig a hole into the earth. I locked every door, shut every curtain, and that night I dreamed of the empty field. But I could feel something watching me from above, like the sky itself had eyes, and they were wide open. Over the next few days I tried to forget, told myself it was just some guy on drugs or someone having a breakdown. But Max, he refused to go anywhere near that trail, and that got to me. A month later, I convinced my boyfriend to go back with me. He's the skeptical type, the kind who jokes about everything. But that afternoon, as the sun dipped low, even he got quiet. We walked until we reached the same spot where I'd seen the man. Nothing. No footprints. No signs anyone had been there. Just the wind rustling the grass and the shadow of the hill stretching longer by the second. That's when we saw her. She was standing with her back to us, facing a gnarled tree in the middle of nowhere, like she'd been there for hours. She wore something long and white, stained and tattered. Her hair hung over her face. I called out. She didn't move. Max, who I'd picked up this time, started whining, trying to bury his head in my jacket. When we got closer, she turned, and I wish I could unsee it. She didn't have a nose, just a black hole in the middle of her face like something had been ripped out. But the worst part? Her eyes. Because even without a nose, without any expression, I could feel her knowing we were there and not caring. Like we were just two more people passing through a place that wasn't ours. We left fast. My boyfriend didn't laugh, didn't crack a joke, just said it was wrong. Wrong in a way he couldn't explain. We drove back in silence. 2 weeks later, I saw another one. A man in a suit, standing alone in the field, motionless, like he was waiting for a bus in the most remote place on earth. It made no sense. He was clean, well-dressed, completely out of place. Max tensed up again, and so did I, because it was the same spot, always the same spot. I started noticing a pattern. The things, I don't even know if I can call them people, always followed the same path. They came from the hill, descended along a specific curve, crossed the field, and stopped, each in their own place. But they never interacted, never acknowledged each other, like pieces of a puzzle I had no way to solve. One night, while letting Max out to pee, I felt a strange heat on my back. I turned and saw a blinding white light, like a spotlight beaming down from the hill. No sound, no movement, just that light, burning into me. I shielded my eyes, screamed, and then it was gone. Vanished. No noise, no trace. But the feeling of being watched, that stayed, like something invisible was still there, studying me. The next day I decided I was done, started looking for a new place to live. It wasn't just fear, it was exhaustion. A weight I carried all the time, like something was draining my energy just by me existing there. Before I left, I went back one last time, during the day, trying to make sense of it. The place looked normal, even pretty. No signs of the figures, no lights, no marks. But the silence was thick, and the wind carried the scent of iron like something old and still. After I moved, the phenomena stopped. Max went back to normal, slept soundly, ate well, even wagged his tail again. And I started sleeping better, but sometimes at night I still wake up feeling like someone's watching me from the window. There's never anything there. But I know. Because those encounters, they weren't normal. They were like tears in reality, like that field had a rift, a point where what we call real brushes up against whatever lives on the other side. And I had the bad luck to cross their path, again and again. And even though I left, part of me is still there, waiting for the next time someone steps into that field, with a dog who senses what we can't see. And after all that, it makes sense why that feeling of being watched out in the field never really goes away. If you made it to the end, leave a comment saying, "Entities in the field," so I'll know you stuck it out through the whole journey. Don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss the next stories. There's always something new here for those who love creepy encounters. And make sure to hit the like button because that's what helps keep these terrifying experiences coming your way. There's another video right here with more ghost stories. Click it and come with me, because the horror isn't over yet.